I used to think being the good son meant always showing up. I didn't realize it also meant disappearing. The living room still smelled like lemon cleaner and regret. I stepped inside, letting the door creak behind me the way it always had. The carpet was still the same faded beige, the same frayed edges near the fireplace where our old beagle used to chew. Everything looked untouched, like time had passed, but the house had refused to age. I set down the bottle of wine I'd brought. Cabernet. Not that anyone here appreciated it. Late again, my mother snapped from the kitchen, her voice as sharp as the knives she kept organized by size and disappointment. I told you 6. It's 6:08. I glanced at my watch, and then at her. She didn't turn around. Her back was rigid, her shoulders tight. Sunday dinners were sacred not for family bonding but for re-establishing control. I hit traffic. I replied, slipping off my coat and draping it neatly over the back of a chair. There was an accident on I-70. She didn't answer. Just clanged a pot against the stove like it had personally offended her. My father sat on the couch, eyes glued to a muted sports channel. He gave me a small, awkward smile, not quite welcome, not quite apology, mostly habit. That's how he survived, by shrinking himself until conflict passed him over like a storm cloud avoiding the smallest hill. I sat across from him, and the silence was only interrupted by the tap, tap, tap of a wooden spoon hitting ceramic. The rhythm of our family. So she said, finally emerging with a bowl of green beans and a plate of roasted chicken. How's your big important job? Still solving tech mysteries or whatever? It's going well, I said. We just closed a cybersecurity contract with the state. Oh? She replied, lips twitching into something close to a smirk. Still single though, I took a breath. Not too deep. Not too long, just enough to swallow the sharpness. Yeah. She set the bowl down with a thud. You know, I saw Lauren last week. She looked happy, healthier. I guess being in a stable relationship does that to a woman. I didn't flinch. That was the trick. If you flinch, she smells blood. That's great for her, I said simply. My father shifted slightly on the couch like he might say something. But of course he didn't. He never did. Dinner passed like a choreographed dance of criticisms. My haircut too trendy. My shirt wrinkled. The wine I brought pretentious. Each jab landed like paper cuts, small, precise, cumulative. By dessert, I felt flayed. She poured herself a glass of the wine she claimed not to like. You still sending money for the electric bill? She asked, feigning casual interest. Yes, I said, though I'd already been debating cutting it off. And the internet. And your phone. She waved her hand dismissively. Well, good sons don't keep score, Ethan. There it was, the phrase. Delivered without venom, yet soaked in guilt. It didn't matter that I'd paid off her credit card debt at 22, co-signed the second mortgage at 26, or covered their water heater replacement last winter. None of it counted. Not really, because if you're a good son, you do it without remembering, without asking why. I smiled. Or rather, I performed the act of smiling. The muscles moved. The eyes, I think, did not. Inside, something cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just cracked. Like a hairline fracture you wouldn't notice until the structure started to buckle. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, but ended up in my old bedroom instead. It was still painted that awful blue, the one she picked when I was 10 because boys should like bold colors. The posters were gone, but the feeling remained. The kind of loneliness that only grows when it's shared with wallpaper. My phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. Hey. I heard your mom's not well. You okay? I stared at it. Read it twice. Then deleted it. It wasn't anger that made me do it. It was clarity. I used to think being the good son meant always showing up birthdays, crises, dinners with cold chicken and colder silences. I used to think it meant bending so others didn't break. I thought it meant saying yes even when I meant no. But that night, as I left without saying goodbye, coat on heart, quiet spine, a little straighter than when I came in, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. I hadn't realized it, but I'd already started leaving. I don't remember the first time I paid one of her bills, but I remember the first time she acted like it was mine to begin with. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Not the comforting kind, but the type that settles over you like a weighted blanket soaked in guilt. The streetlights outside cast long shadows across the hardwood floors as I sat at my kitchen table, a half glass of whiskey in front of me, and a stack of manila folders spread open like patient files. My own history line by line. I hadn't meant to open the boxes. They were supposed to stay in the hall closet taped up and labeled tax docs like something you don't really want to deal with until you're legally obligated. But tonight, I needed to see it. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. The first receipt I pulled was faded but intact. Bank of America, 142.36. Utilities. I had no memory of paying that, but the account number matched the old townhouse. Her name was on it. Mine too. Joint responsibility. Another paper, this one handwritten, was a note she'd slipped under my bedroom door back in 2019. Just need you to co-sign this small thing. 7,500. The interest is nothing. I'll pay it off in 3 months. Promise. I remember the way she said it aloud that morning, voice syrupy and urgent. Just until the refinance goes through. They just need your name on the paperwork. It's basically done. I'd signed, of course. She handed me the pen with a smile that felt rehearsed, like something she wore for special occasions, birthdays, funerals, loans. The payment had started that fall. $140, then $189, then $230, month after month. And somehow it was always my bank account they pulled from. The 3-month promise stretched into years, into silence. The whiskey burned slower tonight. Like it knew. A voicemail pinged from earlier that afternoon. Her voice, sweet, performative, played through the speaker. Hey, sweetheart, just reminding you that the mortgage draft hits on Tuesday. Could you make sure there's a little cushion in the account? Last month, it almost bounced. Okay, love you. No hello. No how are you. Just a request wrapped in obligation. Another page. A Wells Fargo card I didn't remember applying for. Limit $12,000. Balance $11,845.27. Charges grocery stores, nail salons, a boutique pet spa in Annapolis. Then the one that stopped me, cold eucalyptus retreat and wellness, 1325 Sodaswar. I didn't recognize the name at first. Then I remembered the Instagram post. A blurry shot of her wrapped in a towel, flute of champagne in hand. The caption, "Self-care is sacred." She'd said she won it in a raffle. I wanted to believe that. I really did. My hand curled into a fist before I realized it. Not anger, not exactly, but the kind of hollow ache that makes your body tighten just to keep from falling apart. What's mine is ours, Ethan. Her voice rang in my head. That was her favorite line when I questioned anything time, energy, money. It sounded generous until you realized it never worked in reverse. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers, the debt, the signatures, with my name beside hers. I wasn't just enabling her, I was erasing myself. And maybe that was the whole point. Maybe the good son wasn't someone who helped. Maybe he was someone who didn't exist outside of her needs. In the distance, a memory flickered. Lauren standing in this very apartment, arms crossed, her face flushed with frustration. We were fighting again, but that time it wasn't about work or my hours or even our future. She had looked at me exhausted and asked, "Are you her partner or her son?" I didn't answer. Just stared at the floor and waited for the question to pass like a fever. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen for longer than it should have. Then I opened a thread that hadn't seen activity in weeks. Aaron, an old college friend, now a paralegal in D.C. He'd mentioned once, after 2 beers and a venting session, that his roommate was an attorney who handled messy family stuff. I typed slowly, deliberately, each letter a rebellion. Do you still have that attorney friend you mentioned? And I hit send. I lost the girl who loved me, and I still thought I was doing the right thing. It was a cold night in late October, the kind that wraps around your neck like a scarf too tight. The kind of night when city lights feel too bright, too harsh, like they're judging you. Lauren had picked the restaurant, a cozy little French bistro tucked between two brick buildings in DuPont Circle. Intimate, thoughtful, romantic. She wore that deep green dress I always loved, the one with sleeves just long enough to be elegant, but short enough to show she meant it was a special night. I hadn't complimented her. Not because I didn't notice, but because I was answering a text from my mother. "You look nice," she said gently, almost like a peace offering before the war. "Sorry," I murmured, typing fast. "She's just asking about the water heater again." Lauren exhaled slowly. I knew that sigh. I'd memorized it like a sad song. We ordered wine. I picked at the bread. She talked about a new project at work, a nonprofit she'd just signed on to help rebrand. I nodded, smiled, responded with one-word approvals. But halfway through her story, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, it's freezing tonight. What if the heater dies? Frank hasn't called the plumber. Should I just do it myself? Don't ignore me." Lauren watched me read the message, her fork mid-air, a small piece of salmon sliding back onto the plate untouched. "Can we just have one night, Ethan?" she asked, voice low but sharp. "Just one night, that's not a three-way dinner with your mother." I put the phone down, face up on the table like a confession. "She gets anxious about this stuff. You know how she is." She laughed once dry. "Yeah, I know how she is. I just wish you knew how I am." I said nothing. We made it to dessert. Barely. I remember she ordered the creme brulee and didn't touch it. I don't think I tasted mine either. In the Uber home, silence curled between us like a third passenger. When we got inside, she didn't take off her coat. "You know," she said, her voice catching on something sharp. "Your loyalty is killing you." I opened my mouth, but she wasn't done. "You're not her son. You're her escape plan. You're the parachute she pulls when things get too hard. And maybe that used to work for you. Maybe it even made you feel needed, but it's destroying everything else around you, including this." I stood there frozen with nothing to say but everything to lose. She left that night, but not for good. The real goodbye came days later. I found myself scrolling through old texts, hers, mine, the ones from Mom that kept bleeding into moments that weren't supposed to be about her. "Mom, you'd rather be with her than your own family." "Mom, I'm just trying to survive Ethan." "Mom, you wouldn't exist without me. Remember that." It was like reading someone else's life. A man who existed only in reaction, who bent to guilt, folded under the weight of someone else's fears, called it duty. I opened my photo gallery. Dozens of snapshots: Lauren on the boardwalk. Lauren laughing with whipped cream on her nose. Lauren curled beside me on the couch wearing my college hoodie. I selected them all, hit delete, then stared at the trash folder for 10 minutes. My thumb hovered. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her go all the way. I tapped recover. I stared out the window, the city blurred by the reflection of a man I didn't recognize anymore. A man who thought sacrifice meant silence, who thought love was supposed to hurt a little or a lot. I told myself she didn't understand. But maybe I was the one who didn't. Some debts you owe, others you were just too afraid to say no to. At work, the numbers were clean spreadsheets that balanced reports, that made sense, code that ran or didn't. The clarity was addicting. If there was a bug, I could find it. If there was an error, I could fix it. Nothing slipped by unnoticed. At least, not here. But on my lunch break, staring at the browser window filled with credit monitoring alerts, I felt like I was looking at someone else's life again. The alerts weren't new. I had just ignored them for too long, the same way you ignore a toothache, until it keeps you up at night. A pop-up blinked red, recent activity, new credit line opened, approved, $15,000. The lender's name was unfamiliar, but the address was hers. I closed my laptop, got in the car, and drove straight to the bank. The branch smelled like stale air and overbrewed coffee. Music drifted overhead out of sync with my pulse. The woman at the desk polished polite and just detached enough tapped keys as I slid my ID across the desk. "I'd like to see all accounts under my name," I said. "All lines of credit. Active or closed. Even joint ones." She smiled thinly. "Of course. Do you have a few minutes?" I had years. Her eyebrows pinched slightly when the screen loaded. "Well," she said, clearing her throat, "you are currently listed as a co-borrower on 2 open lines of credit. One with us, one external. Both established under your mother's name, Patricia Miller, but with you as a financial secondary." A what? A financial secondary. It gives her borrowing power using your credit profile. It's not uncommon in family arrangements. I didn't sign anything. She looked at the screen again, then back at me. The documents were e-signed, from an IP address connected to your mother's residence, and in both cases she had prior approval using your information from the initial mortgage you co-signed. The room tilted slightly. Not enough to fall, just enough to feel the floor had moved. So she had access because of that. "Yes," she said, voice softening. She had authority. I didn't remember signing those papers, but I remembered the refinance. The long night she called crying. Frank had lost another contract job, and the water bill had doubled, and she just needed something short-term. My name was the net she always fell into, the one I never dared cut. Back in the car, I sat in silence for 5 full minutes before unlocking my phone. Rachel Kim. We hadn't spoken in years, not since a summer law internship where I'd fixed her laptop in exchange for coffee and sarcastic commentary. I texted Rachel, "I need a minute of your time. Or maybe a lot more." She called 20 minutes later. "What kind of trouble are you in?" she asked, blunt as ever. I laughed, one of those bitter, hollow ones. "It's not my trouble," I said. "It's my mother's. But my name's all over it." She listened as I explained. The loans, the e-signatures, the spa retreats disguised as raffle prizes. "So she leveraged your credit?" "Yes, without consent. Technically she had it. Once. Years ago." A pause. Then Ethan. "She's made you financially liable for about $148,000. That's not motherhood. That's theft." I didn't speak. "Do you have copies of any of this?" "Yes. Send it all to me. Every document, every message, every bank statement." I promised I would, and I did. Later that night, as I poured another whiskey and waited for her response, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my mother. "If you're going to start snooping, don't act surprised when you get your feelings hurt." No hi, no explanation, just a threat dipped in maternal tone. I replayed it 3 times. I looked at the walls of my apartment. Bare, neutral, like the inside of a hotel room you never planned to stay in for long. My hand shook slightly. Whether from rage or shame, I couldn't tell. She always said she never needed saving. So why am I drowning? I was the emergency contact, the cosigner, the fallback plan. But never the sun. The rain had been steady all morning, a soft percussion on the windshield that made the world feel slower, quieter, like it was holding its breath. I parked outside a modest brick building in Silver Spring, folder in hand, labeled in thick black ink, 2018-2024. Rachel's office wasn't fancy, the kind of place with humming radiators and cracked leather chairs, but it was the most grounded place I'd been in weeks. She met me at the door, her hair pulled back, glasses perched low. No makeup, no small talk. Just a nod toward the conference room and the words, "Let's get to work." I placed the folder on the table like a confession, and she opened it like a coroner. For the next 2 hours, she flipped through documents with surgical precision. Her fingers scanned pages of auto-renewed credit cards, inflated interest rates, closed utilities reopened under my name. Each paper a scar. Each signature a wound I had somehow agreed to bleed for. "This one's tricky," she murmured, tapping a contract dated 2020. "She used your identity to secure a consolidated loan. Legally, you're listed as the principal. There's no secondary." I didn't even remember the year. Just the stress. The feeling of checking my bank app and wondering why I was overdrafted again. She kept going. Every time I thought she was done, there was another page, another bill, another tiny theft wrapped in love's packaging. Finally, she sat back, let out a breath, and looked me dead in the eye. "You're not abandoning her, Ethan," she said. "You're recovering yourself." The words landed hard. I had spent so long afraid that stepping back meant betrayal, that setting a boundary meant I was selfish, that speaking up meant I was weak. But all this time I'd been bleeding from wounds she insisted weren't real. Rachel slid a document across the table. "Limited power of attorney. It'll let me start the process of isolating your credit profile. We'll send cease and desist letters, contact the bureaus. You'll have to take steps to legally notify her. But we can make it stop." I stared at the page. "So this means I'm protected?" I asked. "It means you're starting to be," she said. "And it also means she'll know you're not playing the game anymore." I signed. The pen trembled slightly in my hand, not from fear, but from the weight of release. When it was done, I gathered the folder, thanked her, and walked to the door. But something in me hesitated, some knot I hadn't untied yet. "Rachel." She looked up from her notes. "I bought her a car in 2019. She cried when I gave it to her. Said, 'One day you'll thank me for making you strong.'" Rachel didn't blink. "How's that strength feeling now?" "Like I'm tired," I said. "Just done." Outside, the rain was heavier. People were ducking under umbrellas, sprinting to cars, avoiding the wet, like it was something that could soak through skin and stay forever. But I didn't run. I walked slowly to my car, folder against my chest, letting the water soak through my jacket, my collar, my sleeves. Each step felt final, not dramatic, just necessary. If love meant debt, I was done paying. I used to hand over my paycheck. Now I hand over documents. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was research, strategy, a calculated return of energy. The invitation wasn't extended to me, not formally, but I knew Denise was in town because Patricia mentioned it loudly on her Facebook page. A smiling picture of them holding mimosa glasses captioned, "Sister brunches cure all they were at the house," which meant they were sitting in the kitchen. Which meant I knew exactly where to walk in and how long it would take for my presence to register. I brought the checkbook as my excuse, one I hadn't used since 2021 but still technically linked to a joint account she opened for emergencies. It felt symbolic, in a way, returning the last physical tether between us. The air inside was warm and slightly sour with syrup and perfume. I heard Denise's laugh first, louder than I remembered, unfiltered in a way that only people who've moved away long enough can afford to be. They were at the breakfast nook, plates half filled with croissants and fruit. Patricia already 3 layers into a story about a neighbor's divorce. "Oh, Ethan," she said with a tight smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Didn't know you were coming." "Just returning this," I said, holding up the checkbook like it was something fragile. Didn't mean to interrupt. Denise stood up to hug me. She smelled like vanilla, and something faintly woodsy reminded me of childhood holidays, of a woman who brought honest gifts and always looked like she was running late. "I haven't seen you in years," she said. "Still working too much?" "Trying not to," I answered. I sat for a minute, no intention to stay long, but Denise was already asking about work, about life, about Lauren. She didn't know, of course. The breakup hadn't made the family circuit. "You always were the dependable one," she said, sipping her mimosa. I told Pat the other day I don't know what she'd do without you. I mean, you've basically been paying her mortgage for years. The sentence hung in the air like a dropped glass. Patricia's fork clinked softly against the plate. Denise froze. I watched the color leave her face. Wait, she said slowly. Was that not Pat? I thought you told him. Patricia cut her off, voice icy but sweet. He offered. I didn't ask. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Denise turned to me, eyes wide. I didn't mean I thought you knew. I thought this was. I mean, you co-signed, right? I smiled politely. It's okay. But it wasn't. Patricia changed the subject with surgical precision. Something about traffic. Something about grocery prices. Her voice grew louder, brighter, until the tension faded into forced normalcy. I left not long after. Told them I had errands. Denise hugged me again, this time without the lightness from before. As I walked to the car, I felt the shift. Not just in me, but in the way the house looked behind me. Smaller somehow. Like it had always needed me more than I'd needed it. That night, well past midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Denise. I didn't know. I'm sorry. She's not well. She finally said what she'd been rehearsing for years. And I finally heard it clearly. The rain was already coming down hard by the time I pulled into the driveway. Water streaked across the windshield like it was trying to erase the view ahead, or maybe the one behind. The lights were on in the living room. Through the front window I could see her silhouette pacing. That always meant a storm, even if the weather was calm. But tonight the thunder outside was just a warm-up act. I stepped inside without knocking. I still had a key, though I didn't expect to use it much longer. My shoes soaked through instantly on the doormat, and I didn't bother taking them off. Patricia was waiting in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they disappeared into her face. Well, she said, you look comfortable. I didn't respond, just held up the envelope of medical receipts I had promised to drop off. It was an errand she'd requested weeks ago, back when things were still simmering. She didn't even look at the envelope. Her gaze was already sharpened, already rehearsed. You know, she started, tone deceptively light. I had the most delightful conversation with Denise today. I let her keep going. She said some things I found very interesting, things that sounded suspiciously like the kind of thoughts someone doesn't come up with on their own. I placed the envelope on the counter. The rain hit the kitchen windows like static. She said I use people, that I manipulate, that I, what was it? Guilt people into obedience? Funny choice of words, don't you think? I still said nothing. And when I asked her where she heard that, she just looked away. But I know it was you. My jaw tightened. She stepped forward, eyes blazing. You've been poisoning people, turning them against me, pretending to be some wounded little martyr while you spread your half-truths. You asked me to bring the receipts, I said quietly. Oh, don't play dumb, Ethan. You've been ungrateful since the day you could walk. I gave you everything. I sacrificed. And this is how you repay me. A chair scraped behind us. Frank, silent as always, stood halfway between the hallway and the TV remote, still in hand, like he'd wandered into the wrong scene. He didn't say a word. Patricia was trembling now, but not from fear. From fury long stored, finally permitted to breathe. You're not the victim here. You're the traitor. You sided with Denise, with your little lawyer friend. You think this is what sons do? I could feel the folder of documents in my coat pocket pressing against my ribs. Credit statements, co-signed loans, proof. I never asked for this, I said. Her face twisted. No, but you sure enjoyed it, didn't you? You liked playing the hero. You liked pretending you were needed. And now that you're not, you're throwing a tantrum. I just want out, I replied. That's it. She paused, then stepped closer, her voice ice cold and brittle. Get out, and don't come back. The sentence sliced through the room like lightning. No scream, no hysteria. Just clarity sharpened to the bone. Frank didn't move, didn't flinch. Just sat back down in front of the TV, turning the volume up slightly as the room imploded. I stood there for another second, listening to the rain outside and the silence inside. Then I turned. I walked out with nothing but my car keys and the folder. No coat. No bag. No goodbye. The front door clicked shut behind me, but it wasn't until I was halfway to the car, rain soaking through my shirt, that I pulled out my phone. I didn't hesitate. Blocked. Her number disappeared from the screen like it had never existed. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. But something inside me exhaled for the first time. She used my name like an access code, so I changed the locks. The cursor blinked in the middle of the screen, hovering over the confirm cancellation button. One click, and it would be gone, at least on paper. I took a breath and pressed it. The confirmation screen blinked back. Autopay disabled. The first cord cut. It was still dark outside. Morning rain tapped the window, steady and rhythmic, like someone trying to knock quietly on my life. My laptop screen cast a soft blue glow on the otherwise quiet apartment. No TV, no music. Just the low hum of the fridge and my own pulse in my ears. One by one, I moved through the accounts. Verizon removed as co-owner. Chase closed a joint credit card I hadn't touched since 2020. Dominion Gas removed my name from the family house utility. The cursor never hesitated. Rachel joined our Zoom call 5 minutes early. She looked alert, hair in a loose bun, glasses on, black coffee in hand. "I've got the revocation letters ready," she said, skipping pleasantries. One for each cosign agreement. And I spoke with the collections firm. "They've confirmed once the power of attorney is filed, they can no longer list you as the responsible party." I nodded. "Send it all." She paused. "How are you holding up?" I laughed softly, but it came out cracked. Weirdly calm. Like I've been holding my breath for years and forgot. Rachel nodded. "Sometimes freedom is quiet." I clicked into another tab and deactivated a card used for grocery runs. She'd once called me in a panic from Safeway, saying the card had declined while she was in line. I'd added a rush payment immediately. That was 2 years ago. Ethan, Rachel said gently, "This is the part where she fights back." "I know." She gave me one last look, then said, "Check your inbox later today. You'll have written confirmation from the credit agencies and from me." The call ended. I sat back. I should have felt relief. Maybe I did. But it came laced with unease, like stepping out of a burning house and realizing the flames are still visible in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed. A single text from my father. "Frank, your mom's been having a rough time. Could you check in?" That was it. No punctuation, no question mark, just an invitation to step back into the fire. I stared at the message for a long time before locking the screen. Rachel's email came a few hours later, simple and clean. Subject: "You're officially no longer financially tied to Patricia Miller." I opened it twice, not because I doubted it, just because I needed to see it again. I made dinner, leftovers, washed the dishes, then checked my inbox one more time before bed. A new message, from a name I knew too well. From Patricia Miller. Subject: "You want a war. You got one." My mother didn't grieve. She performed pain. The first thing I noticed was her dress. Black, flowing, theatrical, like she was auditioning for a funeral no one had invited her to. Denise's birthday had been meant to be quiet, low-key. A few family friends, light catering from a local deli, and those plastic tablecloths in baby pink and lavender she always liked for ironic contrast. The community center's side room wasn't anything fancy: linoleum floors, fluorescent lights, but it was filled with warmth. Laughter bounced off the walls like music. A few old friends from church, neighbors we hadn't seen in years, a cousin I barely recognized, all there to celebrate a woman who'd spent her whole life playing peacekeeper between louder forces. I'd brought flowers, hydrangeas her favorite. Denise hugged me tighter than usual. You came, she whispered. That means more than you think. But the moment cracked like glass the second Patricia walked in. Silence fell as her heels clicked across the tile. She wore dark sunglasses despite the overhead lighting. Her lips were pursed into a tragic line. She held a silk handkerchief in one hand and a small leather clutch in the other. No one had invited her. Sorry I'm late, she announced to no one in particular, pulling off her glasses dramatically. Some of us are mourning. The air grew thick. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. Denise's smile stiffened. This is a birthday, Patricia. Oh, I know, she said. But I figured, well, when you're grieving, it helps to be around family, even if some of them don't want you. She looked at me when she said it. Didn't blink. Theatrics came easily to her. Always had. But this wasn't her usual brand of passive aggression. This was curated suffering, a carefully chosen wardrobe of martyrdom. She turned to a woman I barely remembered, a friend of hers from her quilting circle maybe, and said, You know, it's hard when your own child decides you're disposable, when he erases you. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. I watched the woman's mouth tighten with discomfort, her eyes darting to me. Patricia dabbed at dry eyes. No actual tears, just the motion. Of course, she continued. He has a lawyer now. People like us, we don't get lawyers. We just pray. Whispers started. From the corner of the room, Frank's name floated in the air like smoke. Someone muttered about what really happened. Someone else asked if she was okay. Denise stepped forward, her voice low but firm. Not here. Patricia looked surprised. I thought you cared about family. I do, Denise said. That's why I won't let you turn this into a stage play. More whispers. I didn't say anything. Just stood near the refreshment table, hands folded, staring at a half-melted cube of cheese on a paper plate. The guilt didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in slowly. The kind you've rehearsed so many times, it moves through your bloodstream like memory. And even though I knew the truth, even though I had the documents, the emails, the numbers, some part of me still felt like I'd failed her. That was her power, her gift, turning perception into proof. I left before the cake. Denise followed me out later, meeting me by the back door, keys already in her hand. She's not well, she said. They believe her, I replied. The way they looked at me. It's like I kicked her out and drained her savings. Denise didn't sugarcoat it. So did I. Once. I nodded. We stood there in silence while the sounds of party chatter filtered through the cracked door behind us. Later that night, as I checked my phone before bed, I saw it. A Facebook post. Public. Patricia's profile photo, the one with Frank cropped halfway out, and the caption, Some sons are born broken. She wrote me out of her will. I wrote myself out of her debts. The ink wasn't dramatic. It didn't bleed or blur or scream. It just sat there, blue, smooth, silent, beneath my signature. Rachel's office was quiet except for the soft buzz of the fluorescent ceiling light and the occasional clack of her keyboard. The final documents were neatly arranged in 3 stacks: mortgage releases, credit account closures, and legal revocation of financial responsibility. My name was no longer tethered to Patricia's in any binding way. Rachel flipped the last page and gave a small nod. You're done. No more legal or financial obligations. I exhaled, but it didn't feel like freedom yet. Just stillness. The kind that settles over a house after everyone's left, after the arguments are finished, after the apologies that never came. I sat there for a moment, unsure what to do with my hands. Rachel watched me, her voice softer now. You okay? I thought I'd feel something louder, I said. But it's just quiet. Quiet is good, she said. Quiet means nothing's chasing you anymore. I nodded, gathered the copies, and walked out with a manila envelope under one arm. By the time I got home, the sky had already turned that late winter blue-gray that makes everything feel like a paused movie. I microwaved leftovers and ate them standing at the counter phone face down beside me as if eye contact would invite drama. When it finally buzzed, I hesitated before flipping it over. Dad. I didn't have his number saved as Frank. It had always just been Dad, despite the silence, the absence of real protection, the endless neutrality he'd chosen like a second skin. I answered. There was a pause before he spoke. She's hurting Ethan, he said. Maybe too proud to say it, but she is. I leaned against the counter, pressing the phone tighter against my ear like it might make the words more honest. I don't know if I'm calling because she asked me to or because I felt like I should, he continued. But I figured you ought to know. There was no accusation in his tone. Just fatigue. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from yelling but from years of watching fires burn and never picking up the hose. She left a letter for you, he added. Did you get it? I hadn't. But when I went down to the lobby mailbox an hour later, it was there. Plain white envelope, no return address, no warmth. Inside, her handwriting slanted more sharply than usual. You'll regret this when I'm gone. That was it. No love, Mom, no signature. Just that. I stood in the hallway, the envelope trembling slightly between my fingers. Not because of the threat implied, but because of how familiar it felt. Every message she ever sent had the same formula: guilt dressed up as love, control camouflaged as care. I didn't tear the letter. I didn't respond. I placed it back into the envelope, slid it into a drawer with the others, and turned off my phone for the night. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the quiet finally meant something. It wasn't peace, but it was the absence of noise I no longer needed. I used to fear losing my mother. Now I fear becoming her. The house I helped her keep was now the one she was losing. Rachel had forwarded the foreclosure notice that morning with a single line. You're not liable, but I thought you should know. Attached was a scan of the bank's default notice addressed to Patricia L. Miller. I stared at it on my phone while stirring cold coffee in my apartment, the same cup I'd reheated twice, but never drank. The account numbers weren't mine anymore, but I knew them. I had memorized them when I was 26 and thought that helping meant healing. Now they were just shadows of a life I was shedding. By mid-afternoon, I found myself driving back to the neighborhood I'd sworn off 3 months ago. I didn't park out front. I wasn't ready to be seen even by old neighbors or cracked windows. Instead, I left my car 2 streets away, slipped between manicured hedges, and stood at the edge of the cul-de-sac staring at the place that had been a Sunday prison in disguise. The grass hadn't been cut. The porch light flickered in daylight. Something about that felt symbolic, like she still wanted to be seen even in the wrong light. My phone buzzed. Patricia, I answered. Not because I owed her anything, but because I wanted to know which version of her I was getting. You let this happen, she hissed, not even bothering with hello. You chose this. I said nothing. I gave you everything, she spat. And this is how you repay me, abandoning me when I need you most. Her voice cracked in all the wrong places. Not from grief. From rage. I didn't choose this, I said. You did. Every time you put something in my name and smiled like it was love. You think you're better than me now, I hung up. But the silence didn't last long. My own guilt rose like smoke from somewhere old, somewhere small. I turned around, walked the 3 blocks and stood in front of the house that once felt like mine but never was. She opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been waiting not for me but for the fight. You're here to gloat, she asked. I walked in without answering. The living room hadn't changed. Same beige couch. Same family photo on the mantel, the one where Frank looked like a cardboard cutout and I looked like I was holding my breath. I gave you everything, she said again, following me as I scanned the room one last time. You gave me guilt. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said it, and for once it landed. Not like a knife, but like truth does when it's too late to argue with. She blinked. Once, twice. Then I turned and walked back toward the door. No rush. No drama. Behind me, her voice rose like sirens breaking glass. You are nothing without me. But it didn't echo this time, because I didn't believe it anymore. She didn't fall. She unraveled. Quietly. Her name lit up my phone like a ghost. I hadn't seen it in weeks, maybe months. I almost didn't answer. I told myself I'd deleted the number. I hadn't. Maybe I just wanted to know if she could still dial it. Ethan, her voice was smaller than I remembered. I didn't recognize it at first. Can you come by? I think I need to see you. I don't know what made me say yes. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some twisted remnant of duty I hadn't yet killed off. Or maybe deep down I needed to see what broken actually looked like when it wasn't dressed up in threats. Her new place was a second-floor walk-up tucked behind a laundromat on the edge of town. No name on the buzzer, just the unit number written in marker. The stairs smelled like mildew and old fabric softener. She opened the door before I knocked. Gone was the tailored hair, the sharp lip color, the rigid spine. She wore a sweater that looked 3 sizes too big and had mascara streaked like bruises under her eyes. The apartment smelled like old takeout and forgotten ambition. I was just trying to hold things together, she said almost as soon as I stepped in. Boxes stacked in the corner, some unopened. A lamp sat on the floor without a table. She moved slowly like her limbs had forgotten how to carry her. I didn't know where else to go, she added, then looked at me like I was supposed to fix that. I said nothing. I know things ended badly, she continued, voice shaky. I was just scared, Ethan. Of losing everything. Of being left behind. You weren't scared of losing me, I said. Just scared of losing control. She looked up. Tears welled, but they didn't spill. Maybe they couldn't. I made mistakes, she whispered. That's not what this is about, I replied. This isn't about mistakes. This is about how you built a world where I owed you more than I ever had to give. She sat down on a stained armchair and pulled a blanket around her shoulders like armor. I don't know who I am without all of it. That's the problem, I said. We sat in silence. Somewhere outside, a dog barked and tires screeched against wet pavement. She finally looked up again. Please don't let me disappear. I didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. You disappeared a long time ago. I'm just catching up. I stood, glanced once more around the apartment. There was nothing here I wanted to remember. Nothing left of the woman who once stood at the top of every staircase, every guilt trip, every manipulation. I walked out. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone. 1 press. 2. Confirm. Her number vanished from my contacts for the second time, this time for real. My silence was no longer fear. It was freedom. The rooftop wasn't high, just 5 stories, but it gave a view of something I hadn't had in years' distance. Not from buildings or streets, but from a version of myself that used to flinch every time my phone buzzed. Denise leaned against the railing beside me, sipping a beer she brought over without asking. She didn't have to ask. That was the kind of quiet rhythm we'd found, 2 people who had once survived under the same shadow, now sharing air without apology. Remember how she used to say we were the emotional ones? She said, a bitter laugh hidden in her throat. I nodded, and then cried over the wrong color of wrapping paper. We both chuckled. It felt honest. Not sharp, not defensive, just honest. I used to think I was just sensitive, she said, swirling the bottle gently. Now I think I was just paying attention. I looked over at her. The lines around her eyes were deeper than I remembered, but they weren't from aging. They were from holding back too long for too many people. Why'd you go back? I asked. She took a breath. Guilt. It's a hell of a leash. I understood. Guilt had been my currency too. For birthdays, for dinners, for silence. I had handed it out like it meant love. She told me you abandoned her, Denise said. Said you cut her off with no warning. Did you believe her once? Not anymore. We fell into silence again. This one wasn't awkward, it was full. Full of everything we'd never said when we were younger. The shared memories, the broken rules, the apologies we gave too often to someone who never deserved them. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. Rachel. I tapped it open on speaker. The house has been cleared. No lawsuits coming your way. Everything tied up. You're free, Ethan. Denise looked over at me. How does it feel? I smiled. Not the polite kind I used to wear like armor, but something real. Soft around the edges. Lighter, I said. We stayed up there until the sun dipped behind the buildings. I didn't talk much. I didn't have to. The quiet didn't demand anything from me. It just let me be. Back downstairs, I opened my wallet. Same worn leather, same useless loyalty card to a sandwich shop that had closed 2 years ago. I pulled out the photo. It was the last one I had of us as a family taken at a barbecue 15 years ago. Frank with his hand on my shoulder. Patricia in sunglasses mid-laugh. Me smiling like I believed it would last. I looked at it for a long time. Then I tore it once straight down the middle. And then again. The pieces fluttered into the trash like something lighter than paper, maybe regret. I didn't hate her anymore. And maybe that's how I knew it was really over. She said I'd never build anything on my own. I proved her wrong by not proving anything. The house was modest. 1 story. Brick exterior. A porch just big enough for 2 chairs, though I only had 1. No inherited furniture. No heirlooms in boxes. Just a folding table, a coffee pot, and silence that didn't accuse me of anything. Rachel stood beside me as I signed the final page of the deed. Her eyes scanned the document like she was still waiting for a hidden clause. There wasn't one. For the first time, everything was clean. Most people buy homes to feel safe, she said, sliding the final page into a folder. You did it to stop apologizing. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure how. But her words hung in the air longer than mine could have. The mailbox was already mounted near the door, new brushed steel. Inside, among the coupons and closing notices, was a cream envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in blocky, uneven letters. I didn't need to open it to know it was from him. Frank hadn't called. Not since the night he left the letter from Patricia in my mailbox. I thought maybe he'd stayed behind when the house went under. Maybe he was still sitting on that couch waiting for someone else to change the channel. I opened the envelope. No greeting. No sign-off. You probably think I was weak. You're not wrong. That was it. 1 sentence, written in blue ink smudged like he hesitated with the pen halfway through. I stared at it for a long time, not in anger, just stillness. He was right. He had been weak. And maybe that weakness was the most honest thing he'd ever given me. I folded the paper once, then again. Later that night, I sat on the porch with a lighter and a ceramic dish Rachel had left behind, said it was for incense. I placed the note inside, flicked the flame, and watched the paper curl inward. No smoke alarms. No symbolic last-minute regrets. Just ash lifting slowly into the night. Inside, I didn't hang any pictures. There weren't many to choose from, and none I cared to see. The walls didn't feel empty. They felt new. Like they were waiting for something to be written on them for the first time. I unpacked slowly, 1 drawer at a time, a habit formed in years of waiting for someone else to need something first. By midnight, I had made a bed, set up my laptop, and filled the fridge with nothing but almond milk, fruit, and cold water. It was more than enough. As I stood at the kitchen window, I looked out over the quiet street lined with trees I hadn't planted and houses that looked nothing like the one I grew up in. That was the point. I used to need their approval. Now I don't even need their voice. She gave me life, then spent years taking pieces of it back. The eggs sizzled in the pan, soft crackles breaking the morning hush. Rachel stood barefoot by the sink, turning over toast with one hand, scrolling through a playlist with the other. Outside, the wind moved the trees gently, as if even nature understood the need for quiet. My new house smelled like coffee and calm. It didn't smell like tension held under ceilings or expectations nailed to door frames. Just warm bread, soft jazz, and the kind of air that lets you breathe all the way down. "Can you grab the mail?" Rachel asked. I nodded, wiping my hands on a dish towel and stepping out to the porch. The sky was pale, the kind of gray that promised nothing except honesty. In the mailbox, amid flyers and utility statements, sat a single white envelope, heavy, curled at the corners. My name written in cursive I hadn't seen in months. I didn't need to flip it over to know who it was from. I recognized the curves, the effort to make it neat, like that could make it kind. I brought it inside and laid it on the counter without a word. Rachel looked at it, then at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." I didn't open it right away. I finished the eggs first, poured the coffee, sat across from her while the toast cooled and the sun inched higher on the wall. It was the most mundane thing in the world, this breakfast. But I'd never had it like this before, unrushed, unguarded. When we were done, Rachel carried the plates to the sink, humming something off-key. I picked up the envelope. The back flap was sealed unevenly. I could feel the raised imprint of what was inside, probably a card. Maybe a note. I turned it over and read the front again. Her handwriting. For a cousin's wedding. I hadn't spoken to him in years. The kind of invitation that meant nothing on the surface but spoke volumes underneath. Inside, I already knew what it would say. "Hope you'll come. We're still family after all." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just the implication that everything was fine now because it needed to be. I held it for a long moment. Not with anger, not even resentment. Just the cool, settled weight of recognition. I didn't open it. I didn't throw it away either. I just set it aside. A folded silence between the coffee mugs and a bowl of fruit. A symbol with no power unless I gave it one. I went to the living room and opened the window. A breeze moved through the curtains, clean and steady. The house held no ghosts. Only rooms I could fill with whatever I chose. Rachel called from the kitchen asking if I wanted more coffee. I said yes. And in the space between her question and my answer, I realized something: she wasn't my villain anymore. She wasn't even my mother, not really. Not in the way people mean when they say the word with softness. She was a stranger. A memory. And I didn't reply. And that silence said everything.